because I just don't know which ones fit, which ones are in alignment. Like the promoter would be the president of the United States, and he would say what, and all the way down. And I've seen you say,
it's a little different.
Because myself, I'm an expert at you in your home, at getting you to stand up, go get your wife, go get your kids, get in the car, drive 20 miles, buy a ticket, pay for parking, get some popcorn, have the thing, watch me, go home. I can make you do that. That's a lot of power. You know, how do we...
That's the entertainer culture. I mean, you think about it, that's why news is now predicated on what celebrities are doing, celebrity value.
Very much so.
Because that's the distraction. And like you said, the promoter is the apparent owner, but people don't think about it when they're watching the wrestling match.
No, they think the heavyweight champion.
But even when the promoter becomes the buffoon, he becomes the front man, he doesn't really own it.
Well, let me understand.
The guy behind, there's always the people behind it that actually the investors, the real owners.
Well, let me ask you a question to help make a distinction between the wrestling business and government. If you had a promoter that was just every single time screwing you over, you're getting paid half of what you promised,
Yeah.
What do?
Nothing. I used to get blackballed for having counters. You'd come and you'd count the house.
Right.
Yeah, you had counters. I did a newspaper that I had, an underground newspaper. I got blackballed for that. It said NWA, stood for No Wrestlers Allowed. And I had a guy in a suit with a smile, and in his right hand, this is the crest, in his right hand he had a bag of money. And on his left side was a wrestler in trunks, and the wrestler in his left hand had a wrestling championship, and the promoter had him by the balls. And that's the insignia. But they traced it back to me.
But look at HBO. So you do nothing, right? You walk away. If a promoter was doing that, they go out of business, right?
No, because there's always, see, we're going to come back again to, all right, let's go get him. Ding, ding. Where'd y'all go?
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Oh, it takes men. Nobody's going to stand up.
But you could have, if you
wanted
wanted
to. I went on HBO Real Sports.
Right.
I went on HBO Real Sports, which is really cool, too, because after you make an idiot of yourself on there, they play it every week for a month. So that's really cool. And I got fired. And you can easily look it up. Because what you guys are talking about, I've lived all my life. So the question you came back to me was, well then if they're screwing you, how do you get better? That you must become such a talent that you can take them in the backyard and say, sorry, back hall, say, excuse me, I'm not getting enough. But you can't stand up for everybody, because everybody's not willing to put the same amount in it as you are. Maybe they don't have the same talent, maybe they don't have the same balls, maybe, I don't know, maybe they got a family to feed.
Well, did you ever have any promoters that went out of business?
Yeah, when the WWF first started, there was regionally a whole lot of promoters. And they used to get together in Vegas, and they would do this. Let's say, Adam, you're in Los Angeles territory, and you're working with Sean, and Sean's a promoter. And you're doing great. You're drawing a lot of money. Sean, you don't think Sean's giving you what you deserve. Okay? Another promoter, we'll say Bob Keigo from Kansas City, will just happen to in on a house show, on a venue. And you'll have a great match, and he'll come up to you and say, Adam, you're great. Listen, you just...
Come work for me.
Well, first of all, take care of your obligations with Sean.
Right.
And as soon as you're finished, bud, get the family, get them in school, come on, I love you.
So there's choice and there's competition, right?
Let me finish it. So, Bob Geigel comes, and Adam, if you're champion 6 weeks, if you're over 4 weeks, if you're nothing, 2 weeks is the thing. So, boom, you give him 6 weeks, and, you know, Sean is a promoter, you know, you're the president, so you use him to the best of your ability for your territory, because you don't want any of the good of him to be left over and them crying for him when he's gone. Now, Bob Geigel takes you to Kansas City, and you get your kids in school, and it's the first TV, and then he fires you.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you do something like that, doesn't that ruin your reputation?
No, they do it to everybody.
Adam hasn't had experience with the mafia yet, so he doesn't quite understand.
So it's more like the mafia.
This is the nature of reality.
So it's a lot more like government.
It's not just the problem is you think it's one government. You study history. This is human nature as we understand it, which is until we get to that level that I'm talking about the Aborigines of Australia got to in consciousness. It doesn't matter if there's a government or not. There's a protection racket that goes on, and it's mafia based. If there's no government, it's mafia. If there is a government, it's government relationship with private bankers. At the end of the day, this is the problem. It's a predatory mindset that we're living in right now. It's a reptilian brain structure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It feeds
and
basically knows how to manipulate. Right? And there's a few good guys like us who stand up and say, things should be better.
But where are the rest of them?
And for the most part,
unless
you're here.
Unless people are ready, maybe it's
the problem that I see is just like if you plan to, if you can wake up as many people as you hope to, is everyone is sleeping. I've heard that before. It's just like it takes you 20 years to become awake. Then, once someone is awake, what's to determine whether they'll go towards their own passion? Once they realize, wow, I can do whatever I want and I can live the lifestyle that I choose, I'm going to put that energy into what I want to do versus I'm going to try to get everyone else to believe wake other people up as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, it's great, and there's nothing wrong with that. Before I answer that, though, if I may just say, this process of waking up, you're right, like, it used to take maybe 10, 20 years. And for me, I'm a really slow learner. I mean, I was in the Marines after all, right? And I got home, it took me 10 years from saying, well, I'm a Libertarian because I'm not going to be a Republican or a Democrat, that's lame, to understanding what it means philosophically. I would say that was my awakening. It was a 10-year process. And there's an old joke, like, what's the difference between a statist and a libertarian? And a statist, someone who turns to government, believes in government, believes that force and violence are good ways to organize society. What's the difference between a statist and a libertarian? About 6 months. And now it's, 1 weekend of watching YouTube videos and reading Wikipedia articles, because the propaganda has us attached to this idea of using violence to solve problems. And you have all of these objections. Who will build the roads? Who's going to provide for the public safety? Who's going to police? Who's going to go after violent criminals? And when you can just have all those questions answered right away at the click of a button, because we have the truth button now at our fingertips, that process is rapidly accelerating. But if someone's response is, cool, I'm out, I'm going to live according to these values, that's enough. That's enough to bring down the system, because someone who wakes up to this doesn't go out of their way to pay taxes, doesn't vote for douchebags to be in charge of the rest of us, doesn't support the police state, doesn't call the police on their neighbors for stupid stuff. Like, that fundamental raising of awareness, even if they don't get engaged and become activists, is just as important, because you live differently. And if you're awake and you go, well, I understand that the Federal Reserve is the underpinning of this entire system, that it is the center of this entire racket. Oh, well, Bitcoin comes along. Oh, well, I can transfer some of my business to Bitcoin. I can disempower the system. That stuff is huge. In fact, more than activism, more than standing around with signs or going to protests, is living differently. That kind of civil disobedience in your lifestyle.
Bitcoin's a donation. Bitcoin's a donation.
No, it's money. Bitcoin is a new cryptocurrency digital monetary system.
What happens to religion under Libertarian? What happens to all the different?
I think you'd have freedom of worship, no?
Absolutely. And right now we have the government officially state sanctioning, although in the United States it's not as bad as in most countries, but carving out legal separate powers for different institutions and entrenching powers, and you have a lot of corruption.
I heard you say earlier reptilian. I don't know. So there's tall whites, grays, and reptilians. I can't remember the fourth one.
I think there's more. I think there's probably about 20 plus species on this planet.
Yeah, I mean it though.
Yeah.
They're here.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind.
I think they live.
Do you believe that, Adam?
The more I think about it.
I think it's a good metaphor for the superclass. I don't think there's anything more scientific to the theories of aliens or reptilian people or anything like that. But it's the lines of what is the metaphor and what is reality kind of blur when you look at the superclass and you look at what they're capable of with all the money in the world and all the technology that they're able to keep from us through DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project, the DoD's, scientific laboratories and the stuff that they have access to that nobody else has. They're almost diverging into another species.
Did you hear about Denver? And I don't know if it's correct, but they have huge tunnels. They dug under Denver.
I'll tell you something. When I was flying in there for a conference, landing in Denver, the taxi driver told me he used to work as a bagman, at the airport. He said, it's the only airport I've ever seen in the world that they take your luggage underground. And he said, when you're driving down there, you realize that they've got roads, and then there's all kinds of roads that lead to other roads, and you're not supposed to go down there.
See what's going on.
He's like, I heard the same kind of things, which we saw when we were working with Jesse Ventura on conspiracy theory when we went to Missouri. We saw like these great cavernous basically they built in like these big cavernous storage facilities inside the mountains and underground.
Yeah.
And oftentimes those have like tennis courts and like almost like a hotel quality to it. So apparently they have the same things going on in Denver, which makes you wonder because there's so much military presence in Colorado. That's the thing. NORAD, Colorado Springs, going back to Tesla being there doing his experiments in the 1910s in Colorado Springs. It makes you wonder like.
Well, I've been told that again. I'm not qualified as you gentlemen. I want to make sure that people know that, so I'm more asking questions. But they want to get you down to a chip where everything about you, your bank account, your anything, is on this little chip. And they can trace you. Like they can trace $100 bills now.
But that's what they said. Talking about the taxation process, right? And why IRS is illegal, and this whole process is illegal. It's illegal to tax your labor, right? That's very clear. And the film Aaron Russo did from Freedom to Fascism was fantastic on that subject. Woke a lot of people up. Really worth watching. Aaron Russo was a guy who he told Nick Rockefeller from the Rockefeller family tried to recruit him to join the Council on Foreign Relations. The CFR is the private part of the empire, basically, that really has a major influence on the media. The CFR very much controls the output of media because most presidents, most major media moguls, intellectuals, they all go to these, they're kind of meetings, the CFR, and they have, I've seen it. They have lectures. They basically discuss issues, and they kind of push, they push a certain agenda, let's say internally, and then that usually trickles out from within that think tank, and it trickles out into the media that you see, TV shows. So Nick Rockefeller was trying to bring Aaron Russo, because Aaron Russo was a big producer, did Trading Places, worked with Bette Midler his whole life. He's trying to say, look, come work with us, and so they're hanging out, they're talking, and
he's trying to recruit him to the propaganda wing of the superclass.
Exactly. So Nick and Aaron are hanging out, they're going, having a good time, limos, and this is before 9/11, and Aaron says, Nick tells him, look, you're going to see in the near future that we're going to have wars with these against people that don't even exist, living in caves, right? We're going to tell people they're in caves, right? And people are going to believe this, right? And we're going to have troops in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and just for oil and financial purposes. But people are going to believe the mythos, right?
And Aaron asks him why.
Yeah, and he's like, "What's the ultimate goal for you guys? You have all the money you want. You're Rockefeller. You've had $1 billion since 1900, right? So what is this?" And he goes, well, at the end of the day, we want to be able to put chips in people and control people's every decision. At the end of the day, exactly. We want to be able to make sure that we know, and they're already working towards this end, right, as far as like the Facebook and the social network is concerned. We got to know, hey, well, what time are you more likely to, purchase this item? At what point are you more likely to watch American Idol? At what time are you more interested in, that film? And to be able to not only know that, but then also control that decision-making process. Total control of the human psyche, right, the mind. And this is not government, though. This is the private sector merging with government. Yeah. But again, this is why I fear the mentality, though, because the private sector can also do this too.
Well, hold on. Let me draw a connection here, because Sean is so right on in so much of his understanding, but is missing, I would say, this one key understanding here. And by the way, Sierra will go on a date with you after you've read that book. She said that.
Sierra will hold you to it.
But you say it's about control, right? When you say we need government for anything, you're saying we need a system of control. You're doing the exact same thing. You're saying, well, because I can't figure out how we could do this peacefully right now, I want some system of control. I want a constitutional government. I want a government to build the roads. I want a government to do these things. You're saying, and just consider this. We could argue this again forever, but I think this angle might really capture our divergence in thinking here, which is that you don't see that what you are doing when you say we need a constitutional government for X, Y, and Z, you're saying I want an institution to control people because whatever your personal motivations are, even if they're totally benign, it's the exact same thing as a Rockefeller saying, I just want to control people. Control is an illusion.
Control is an illusion. The Rockefellers had a lot of control over the political process. They took control. They used their money and influence, and they took control. That's why David Rockefeller running the Democratic Party, and Nelson Rockefeller's brother running the Republican Party. I mean, that's the kind of insanity of the world we're living. But again, that's based on their private financial gain in an imperial model of really, it's a monetary system that we're under. Their control is based upon monetary powers.
Yep.
And this is, to me, this is the antithesis of how we have real economic growth and development. You've got to go to a currency that's predicated in sovereignty, let's say, sovereign currency. Right?
Free choice. Whoever uses it gets to choose whether they use it or not.
Right. First, from a central bank, I believe, controlled by the Treasury, that ultimately is answerable to Congress, to the people. But then having competitive currencies like gold and silver, I think, is fantastic.
What do you think about like the whole world just becoming one?
That's exactly what I'm advocating. And a society, as a global society, can only happen when it is united in freedom.
You see, I'm looking and I'm listening, and people have character faults. They just, ego, jealousy, there's all these things. But, and I'm watching the world, and so many more people, and it's just, when they talk about the NWO, there's no other place to go right now unless we all are under one system and we all are getting along.
It's no system. The idea of a system,
no system,
right? We're all under the same moral system.
There you go. And then who pays for what, when, how? It's a huge.
It's like who will build the roads, who will pick the cotton,
who will do the school, who will pick the cotton.
But see, when you have faith in nonviolence, when you have faith in freedom, those questions don't really matter anymore because you understand that it's like a scientific principle. It's like gravity. When gravity was identified and became a commonly accepted principle, people didn't go, but hot air balloons, therefore gravity must have an exception. No, they said, well, how do we figure this out scientifically? And they go, okay, well, air that's lighter than other air, yada, 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 and that's how hot air balloons work.
And how do you keep the bad people from coming in and taking over again once you get rid of the lot that you got now?
First of all, how do you get rid of the lot you got now? That's a big question.
If the worst thing that you're saying about what I'm proposing is it might turn back into what we have today, that's really ultimately the only fair rebuttal. But the answer is you have to change the paradigm, as Sean pointed out. It needs a broader social enlightenment, and it needs people to understand that they can live free, that nonviolence is the way, and that they should stop carving out this moral exception for government.
See, my main fear of this notion of freedom, remember, we've been predicated on that notion that's free choice in the dumbing down process of America. The last 40 years of this takeover of our culture, of our society, to the level that people are are eating McDonald's. They're making worse choices for their health.
Hold on, I'm writing this down. Sean Stone is afraid of freedom.
Well, no, again, I'm saying that ideology of so-called, freedom. That was, like Adam Curtis did a great documentary.
The commercialized version of it,
where it was like the century of the South. Like you're free. You're free to eat whatever you want, but people are making